Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Trump has paused his tariffs for 90 days. It should be called a rollback or a U-turn after markets crashed and US bonds lost value. But the Americans are nothing if not spin masters, so they're calling it a pause and a win. Go figure. The markets are trying to calm down, recession fears have not gone away, and trust issues have worsened. We'll look at what prompted the pause, why China is still under attack now with 125% tariffs and how it is fighting back. What should be India's strategy? Why Germany is mulling moving gold back from the US and what lies ahead in the Trump trade war. Also in focus, 2611 accused Tehevur Rana is back in India. It exposes US terror hypocrisy. They took 16 years to extradite a terrorist and cut a deal with his partner. Why US visas are being cancelled over anti-Trump posts. How the Panama Canal has become a battleground. Would you clone your pet? Thousands of people are doing it. And can artificial intelligence predict murder? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Turkey and Israel hold talks to ease tensions over Syria. Ankara is a key supporter of the new Syrian regime which toppled Bashar al-Assad last December. But Israel wants to keep the Syrian forces away from its border and has launched airstrikes and ground incursions to deter them. Turkey has suspended all trade with Israel over the Gaza war. The US and Russia swapped prisoners as they push to rebuild ties. Washington exchanged a sanctions-busting suspect for a ballet dancer held by Moscow. The exchange took place at an airport in Abu Dhabi. This is the second prisoner swap under US President Donald Trump. The death toll from the Dominican Republic nightclub disaster rises to more than 200. The tragedy took place on Tuesday after a roof collapsed at a crowded nightclub. More than 500 people have been injured. This is the Caribbean nation's worst disaster in decades. More trouble for ousted Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. A fresh arrest warrant has been issued against her and her daughter in a corruption case. Hasina also faces 2 arrest warrants over alleged humanitarian crimes and forced disappearances. Last August, she fled Bangladesh and has been living in India since then. And look who's back as captain in the Indian Premier League. MS Dhoni will lead the Chennai Super Kings for the remainder of the tournament. He will replace Rituraj Gaikwad, who is out of the IPL due to an elbow injury. 43-year-old Dhoni was captain of the CSK till 2024.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate.
Donald Trump has rolled back the tariffs 8 days after he announced them and 12 hours after they came into effect. He has declared a pause. In fact, his trade war began unraveling from the word go. Pressure started mounting on the White House from top CEOs to Wall Street traders. Everyone wanted Trump to slow down, and after much grandstanding, he complied.
They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate.
Trump says this 90-day pause is for 75 countries, those who have been calling up and pleading with him for a trade deal. The actual words he used were worse, so we'll go with pleading. Trump has been boasting about this, suggesting that the whole world is bending over backwards to woo him. He kept saying he won't budge. But he did within 12 hours.
TSMC, I gave him no
So America's
money.
trade
Great company.
partners now have 90
Most powerful
days.
in the
If they
world,
can
biggest
manage a
company
deal
in the
in this
world, spending
period,
$200 billion
they won't face tariffs. But China is not part of this list. It is clearly enemy number one for the United States, so Donald Trump is piling on the pressure. He has raised tariffs on Chinese goods again from 104% to 125%. We'll discuss this in detail in just a bit, but for the moment, let's focus on Trump's U-turn. Here is how the last 24 hours played out. As always, it began on social media. That's how things begin with Donald Trump. On social media, he posted on his platform Truth Social, and this is what he said. This is a great time to buy. That's all. That was the post. Traders took note. They gave a mixed reaction during the early morning trade. The markets fluctuated, swinging between red and green. There was a lot of speculation on what this post really meant. Many thought Trump was teasing another announcement, maybe a shift in policy or at least a pause. While all of this played out in the markets and on social media, behind the scenes, Trump was working on an announcement. He huddled with his Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Together, they drafted the 90-day pause plan. And within hours, it was made official. Again, Trump broke the news on social media. Minutes later, Bessent gave a statement to the press.
We saw the successful negotiating strategy that President Trump implemented a week ago today. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they are in this very spot. Do not retaliate, and you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you.
He makes it sound like that was the plan all along. Trump's out of the deal and what have you. That's how Trump likes to frame each negotiation. Step one, take aggressive action, take an extreme position. The idea is to shock and awe. Do something unexpected that stuns the other side. That is step one. Step two, claim instant success. Say that the other side is caving. And step three, take a pause, announce a concession, and open the door for negotiation.
Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them.
The White House is making it sound like a win, but it's a premature declaration. Trump still needs the trade deals to be locked. That's what the next 90 days are for. Without the trade deals, the tariffs could come back, so a deal is the final step, at least in Trump's calculus. And he's not giving up on that goal. He has not scrapped the tariffs. Even the pause/rollback is not complete. He has not withdrawn the 10% baseline tariff. Remember, this is something that came into effect on the 5th of April. Trump had imposed a flat 10% tax on every U.S. trade partner. And this 10% tax still applies. Same with the tax on steel, aluminium, and automobiles. Their imports, steel, aluminium, and automobile imports, were slapped with a 25% tariff, and that remains unchanged. The big tariffs, country-wide tariffs, were announced on April 2nd. Trump called it Liberation Day. Before that, he had taxed Canada and Mexico separately. Then he rolled back some of it. He's basically been taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's quite chaotic. Nonetheless, the markets welcomed this latest pause. Indian markets were shut today because of a national holiday. So we'll see the reaction tomorrow. U.S. stocks surged after Trump's announcement. Investors added $4.8 trillion in one day in value. This is the largest gain on record, $4.8 trillion. And this was yesterday. How are the markets doing today? The unease has returned. U.S. stocks appeared volatile early in the day. The dollar has also slipped. Investors remain uncertain about the long term, and that says a lot. After pausing the tariffs, Trump and his team are taking a victory lap, but investors are in no mood to celebrate yet. They're not confident about what may be coming next.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy. Bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it.
So the tariffs kicked in yesterday morning, and by nightfall, Trump had hit pause. A 90-day pause for every country except China. No details, no real explanation, just a pause. So what changed? For a president whose brand is rooted in toughness, this is a rare concession. Trump's been hyping up this tariff plan for weeks, promising to go full steam ahead. There was no backing down, not even when the markets tanked. So what prompted the sudden U-turn?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done.
You heard him. Trump says people were getting yippy. That's the word he used, yippy. But chances are this was not the only reason. So let's look at the factors that led to this U-turn. Number one, US debt bonds. The trade war hit them hard. It triggered a panic sell-off of US bonds. And what are bonds? You see, governments need money to run a country, but they don't always have enough of that money. So they borrow money by selling something that is called bonds. And who buys these bonds? Individuals, companies, even foreign governments. They can all buy US government bonds, or any government bonds for that matter. In return, the government pays them interest. That's the long and short of a government bond. Now, US government bonds are usually seen as a good investment. People love buying US bonds because they're seen as a safe haven. Investors flock to them during tough times. So the bond market is like a canary in a coal mine, but this time something spooked the canary. Trump's tariffs kicked off a trade war. It made investors nervous, so many of them started selling their US bonds. When you sell, bond prices drop. And what happens when bond prices drop? Interest rates go up. Basically, it costs the government more to borrow money. There aren't enough people buying their bonds. And that signals just one thing. Investors were losing confidence in the US economy. So Donald Trump was not really worried about the markets collapsing, but the bond sell-off, that was a different story altogether. If it kept going, his entire agenda could have become financially untenable. So behind the scenes, Trump officials were panicking. His own Treasury Secretary, by the way, called the situation, and I'm quoting, uncomfortable. Looks like it got a little too uncomfortable.
Bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had. Well, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day.
So that was reason number one, the bond market sell-off that threatened the financial stability of the US government. Reason number two, Trump was losing political capital. While markets were sending signals, Trump's phone lines were melting. CEOs were frantically dialing the White House. Republicans were seeking clarity. Constituents were asking for answers, and all of them had the same warning. Their patience had limits. With midterm elections next year and public sentiment souring, the cost of staying the course was rising by the hour.
You have to have flexibility. I could say, here's a wall, and I'm going to go through that wall. I'm going to go through it no matter what, and keep going, and you can't go through the wall. Sometimes you have to be able to go under the wall, around the wall, or over the wall. These guys know that better than anybody, right?
Which brings us to reason number three, negotiations. Ironically, it was the success of the tariff threat that gave Trump an off-ramp. The tariffs jolted countries into picking up the phone. They all wanted to talk to Trump. In true art of the deal fashion. That's the whole point. make a big move, rattle the room, then wait for them to come to you. In Trumpian logic, that looks like a victory. So for him, this is not a pause. This is a tactical recalibration, a pause that could give way to 100 potential trade deals.
A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And they'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody. But they weren't fair to the United States. They were sucking us dry.
This tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump. He is a man of gut decisions, calibrated more by cable news than cabinet meetings. Policy is often reactive, not proactive. Negotiation is a performance, not a process. 1 week, the world braces for a trade war. The next, it's a pause and a negotiation bonanza. So what happens next? Will the tariffs come back after 90 days? Maybe, maybe not. No one knows for sure. But what happened here says something bigger. Trade wars are not just about tariffs. They're also about timing, perception, and politics, and sometimes even the boldest of plans have to wait. Let's talk about China now. Donald Trump is doubling down on Beijing. In 2 days, he has raised tariffs on China twice. The tax on Chinese imports is now at 125%. That's higher than anyone else. Anything coming from China into the US will be taxed 125%. The US president has singled out China. There is no tariff pause for the Chinese. At the same time, he believes that China wants to make a deal with him.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well. And they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal.
So Trump has not given up hope. He believes China does want to make a deal. But Xi Jinping doesn't know how to ask. That may or may not be the case. What we can say is this. Xi Jinping has a response, and he is delivering it quite clearly and effectively. China is retaliating every step of the way. In round one, Trump slapped a 54% tariff on China. China hit back with 84% retaliatory tariffs on US imports. Enraged, Donald Trump raised the stakes. He increased the tariffs on China to 125%. But Beijing remains undeterred. It is fighting back in multiple ways, some symbolic, others substantial. For instance, China has moved the WTO against the US. That's the World Trade Organization. Its mandate is to enforce international trade rules, but in recent years, its limitations have become quite obvious. So China's appeal may be just to make a point. The WTO may not be able to help them very much. The second move from Beijing is this. It is punishing American businesses. It has restricted 18 US companies. They will have a tough time doing business in China now, and this happened yesterday. 18 companies. Today, Beijing went after Hollywood. Reports say it will curb movie imports from the US. And now with Donald Trump raising the stakes further, China plans to target American interests in more ways. Here's what they said today.
The United States is still imposing tariffs on China, and China is firmly opposed to such bullying. China will absolutely not accept pressure, threats, and blackmail. That is not the right way to deal with China. If the U.S. side really wants to talk, it should show an attitude of equality, respect, and reciprocity. If the United States ignores the interests of the two countries and the international community and insists on fighting a tariff war and a trade war, China will certainly accompany it to the end.
We will fight till the end. They're calling Trump's actions blackmail. What about Trump's offers to make a deal? Does Beijing want to work something out? Here's what China's Commerce Ministry, here's how they responded to the question.
China's position is clear and consistent. The door to talks is open, but dialogue must be conducted on an equal basis with mutual respect. China will stand by its position until the end. Pressuring, threatening, and blackmailing are not the correct ways to deal with China. We hope that the U.S. will work with China. Based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and a win-win cooperation, we will properly resolve differences through dialogue and consultation. Thank you.
China says it is open to dialogue, but it doesn't trust the US. It doesn't believe that Trump will negotiate in good faith. It's a bit rich coming from China, but I guess that's how karma works. Unfortunately, this deadlock hurts the rest of the world too. Because the US and China are the world's two biggest economies, their clash will have a lot of collateral damage. The US is the biggest importer of goods in the world. China is the biggest exporter. Unlike other countries, Trump has not given China an out. Neither has Beijing shown any sign of stepping back. It is preparing for the long haul, complete with a trade war toolkit. China is basically working on two fronts. One, stabilizing its economy. Two, raising pressure on the US. At home, Beijing is working to calm the stock markets. And for this, it has mobilized state-owned enterprises, SOEs. They're very big in China. When Chinese stocks fell after Trump's announcement, these state-owned enterprises bought shares to keep prices stable. China's Reserve Bank is also doing its bit. It has allowed their currency, the yuan, to weaken. And how does that help? It makes Chinese exports cheaper. It negates the impact of the tariffs to a certain extent. Beijing is also trying to control the narrative. Chinese censors have been selectively, of course, censoring posts online about Trump's tariffs and the larger trade war. Posts that target and criticize the US are being allowed. The ones that discuss Trump's tariffs in details are being removed. The idea is to shape public sentiment in favor of China and paint the US in poor light. So that's the domestic response. And in the days ahead, China could take more targeted steps. It could hit US agricultural imports. That's a key part of Trump's support base. The US financial services sector could also be in the crosshairs. This includes American investment banks and asset management companies. Again, these are part of Trump's support base. So the aim is to strike at Trump's political backers, to build pressure on the US president. These do not look like the moves of a country that is dying to get a deal with Trump. This is a fight back. The US-China trade war is escalating.
The last few days I've been thinking about it. We don't want to hurt countries that don't need to be hurt, and they all want to negotiate.
So Trump is now China's headache. He has increased tariffs again to 145% now. But that's no reason for India to be complacent. In fact, now is the time to be proactive. India has 90 days to make its next move. The first priority will be to conclude a trade deal. If not a full one, at least a mini trade deal. One that will avert the tariffs, because the next round could be more painful. Look at Trump's initial tariffs. He excluded some crucial industries like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. They were not tariffed. But his next round could include them.
So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals. And when they hear that, they will leave China, they will leave other places because they have to sell. Most of their product is sold here.
And that's bad news for India. We export a lot of pharma products to the US. The trade is worth almost $10 billion. Any tariff on that could hurt producers. And we saw the impact on Wednesday. India's pharma stocks took a plunge. The Nifty's pharma basket was down 2%. That's another reason for India to speed up the trade talks. But that's only one part of the plan. Indian officials clearly see this as an opportunity. Yesterday, we spoke to India's Commerce Minister. He called the trade war a good omen.
The US has suffered massive trade deficits because of the non-market economy that is China, because of their predatory pricing or unfair trade practices. And I think the United States is trying to reset the rules of the game. And in some sense, it's a good omen for India.
So how can India turn this challenge into a success? That requires mainly two things. Number one, diversifying our exports beyond the United States. Right now, the US is our biggest market. It makes up more than 18% of India's total exports. But now it's an unreliable market, which is why India needs to diversify. How do we do that? By striking more trade deals with other partners. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is on the job. She's on a visit to Britain right now. Her goal is to seal a free trade deal with London. And reports say 90% of the deal is done. Just a couple of issues are left to be addressed, like whiskey, cars, and pharmaceuticals. India's biggest concern was mobility. New Delhi wanted more British visas for Indians, and reports say that issue has largely been addressed. If so, we could see a deal soon. A second agreement is being discussed with Europe. The European Union president had visited New Delhi this year. She agreed to conclude a trade deal before the end of 2025, and both sides are taking a new approach. They want to finish the deal in phases. Normally, you sign one comprehensive agreement, but India and the EU want to break it up. Issues of least difference can be taken up first. The more contentious ones can be taken up later. And what would that achieve? Well, some of the barriers can be lifted sooner. You don't have to wait around for a full deal to get things going. I guess this makes the government strategy pretty clear. Strike as many deals as possible. In fact, the finance minister spelled it out herself. She said, multilateral trade is on the back burner. Bilateral is the way to go.
India is also looking at many bilateral arrangements. In the recent past, we've signed agreements with Australia, with UAE, with Oman, and we are looking forward to concluding the bilateral trade agreement with UK, negotiating also with the EU, and this is going to catch up, and I think that's the way the world is going. Multilateral is at the moment in the back burner.
So that's part one of India's plan, strike deals to reduce trade barriers. The second part is arguably more important. India must ramp up its manufacturing footprint. Just look at these numbers. India makes up 2.9% of the global manufacturing output. China makes up more than 31%, 2.9 versus 31%. Almost a third of all goods in the world are made in China. Now, Trump is intent on breaking that dominance. Even Europe is looking for alternatives, and that is where India comes in. A similar opportunity came up a few years back during Trump's first term as president. First, he launched a trade war with China. Then came the Wuhan virus pandemic, and both these events forced companies to shift out of China. But where did they go? We don't have the full numbers with us. But look at the period from April 2018 to August 2019. This is before the pandemic. 2018 to 2019, this was the peak of the US-China trade war. Around 56 US firms relocated from China. 26 of them went to Vietnam. 11 went to Taiwan. 8 went to Thailand. Do you know how many came to India? Just 3. Many experts ruled that lost opportunity, that chance to capitalize on the exodus from China. But thankfully, a second opportunity has presented itself now. It happens very rarely in geopolitics. So it is important for India to make it count this time. Back then, companies had certain concerns. They said India's tariffs were too high. They complained about red tape and regulatory issues. Almost 5 years have passed now. India has made strides to address those concerns. So let's see if we have better luck this time. It's been a financial thriller with no clear ending. The markets plunge into chaos, then they soar on a single announcement. 1 minute, China faces 125% tariffs. The next, it has 145%. One day, the US is heading towards a recession. The next day, predictions suggest only a slump. But beneath all the ups and downs, there's a bigger question that is haunting the global economy. Can the US still be trusted as the world's safe haven? The 90-day pause in tariffs may have calmed the markets, but it seems to have rattled America's most powerful currency of all, trust. Our next report tells you why.
The markets have been on a wild roller coaster for weeks. 1 minute, they're plunging. The next, they're skyrocketing. And just when everyone thinks the ride is going to end in a crash, a surprise twist happens. Trump hit the brakes on his tariff plan. The news is like a sudden breath of fresh air. Global markets surge again, registering one of their biggest gains since the Second World War. But here's the thing. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Yes, the pause sounded like good news at first, but it doesn't mean the storm is over. You see, Trump's move brought a brief calm. But the reality was that tariffs were still very much a part of the picture. China wasn't even included in this 90-day break, and Washington-Beijing tensions are only getting worse. In fact, the tariffs on Chinese goods has shot up to 125%. So the trade war is not exactly ending anytime soon.
Everything is still very volatile because with Donald Trump, you don't know what to expect because this is really big uncertainty in the big market. The threat of recession has not faded, and one of the most important indicators is that U.S. interest rates are spiking because people fear that China will unload $1 trillion worth of U.S. Treasury bills.
And here's where the plot thickens. The pause in tariffs gave Wall Street a reason to cheer, but the underlying uncertainties remained. When the tariffs were announced, most economists predicted a recession, but they've backtracked from it now. Goldman Sachs now sees no recession in the near future, but has kept odds of a serious downturn at just under 50%. So they believe the trade tornado has been averted. But as a lot of experts have warned, the US economy is still in a precarious place. Here's the real problem. All this uncertainty, these constant policy flip-flops, and the erratic nature of the Trump administration's approach to trade, it's starting to erode one of the US's most valuable assets, trust. For years, the US has been seen as a safe haven for global investors. When times were tough, people turned to US government bonds and the dollar. They knew the US had the stability and power to weather any storm. But can they say that now? With tariffs being imposed and lifted on a whim, markets swinging wildly in response to every tweet, it's becoming harder and harder to trust the US as a safe bet. Sure, the 90-day tariff pause gave the markets some breathing room, but it didn't fix the deeper issue. The US's role in the global economy is uncertain. And in a world that's already full of uncertainties, that's a problem. As investors, businesses, and governments watch how the US handles its trade relationships, the immediate threat of a US recession might have eased. But the broader implications are still unfolding. America is still at a crossroads, and whether it can regain the confidence of investors is still very much up in the air. The next chapter in this story could be just one Trump tweet away.
So tariffs are paused, but the chaos continues. And you know what they say about chaos? It's really bad for business. Pretty soon it could hurt brand America. The United States has always been seen as a safe bet. Want a stable currency? Use the US dollar. Want a trusted government bond? Buy from the US Treasury. Want to store your gold abroad? Just ask the Federal Reserve. This is how things have been run since the Second World War. It is a system designed by the United States, and it is backed by their military and economic heft. But could it all be unraveling? Well, the signs are there. Germany is thinking about bringing back its gold from the United States. As you know, every country has a gold reserve. They stock up bullions for stability. But some of those bullions are stored abroad, mainly in London and New York. Why is that? Well, London and New York are key financial hubs, so it's easy to sell or pledge the gold. Plus, security is a big concern. Say your country is under attack, your enemies take over the gold vaults. You would lose access to a key source of money, and this is why countries store some of their gold abroad. And Germany has a lot of it. They have some 3,300 tons of gold. Out of this, 1,200 tons of gold are stored in the United States. But some German leaders now want to bring it back, and that includes a former German minister. They want to bring back the gold, or at least inspect it. Why? Because they do not trust Donald Trump. Technically, the gold is on US soil. Imagine the US government deciding to take it over using force. What would Germany do? Would they send soldiers to New York? I know it sounds like a far-fetched scenario, but German leaders are worried. They feel it is better to be safe than sorry. I'm sure other countries are also discussing this concern. India, for example, has been bringing back its gold. New Delhi stores gold in London, New York and Basel, Switzerland. But recently, a lot of it has been brought back, nearly 200 tons in the last 2 years. 200 tons of Indian gold has been brought back. Now, India's reasoning was different here. The Reserve Bank of India felt confident about the country's economic trajectory. Hence, they decided to repatriate the gold. But Donald Trump adds a different dimension to the campaign, the dimension of trust. Can you trust America to safeguard your gold? As of now, this is just a question. There is no global campaign to relocate gold from America, but the mere debate is a story in itself. It tells you how trust is eroding. Just look at the US dollar. In the year 2000, the dollar made up 70% of global reserves, 70. Countries like to stock up the dollar. But now it has fallen to 57%. Same with US government bonds. It's seen as a very safe bet by investors. Normally, they stock up on US bonds when there is uncertainty. But this week, despite the chaos, investors sold US bonds. Why? Because of eroding trust in the United States. And America has only itself to blame for this problem. They created this whole system after the Second World War, and they put themselves at the center of it. Fair enough, they won the war, plus no other country had the will or the power to do it. But when you become the centerpiece, you must be trustworthy. You must avoid politicization, and that is where the US failed. They weaponized global financial services, they weaponized the dollar's dominance, and they used this system to further their gains. So naturally, countries pushed back. Of course, Trump is adding to that chaos. Until now, only American rivals were pursuing alternatives, but now even allies like Germany are doing it. As I said, these are just conversations for now. But if they gain momentum, they could signal the end of America's financial dominance. It's a big day for India. A key accused in the Mumbai terror attacks has been extradited. His name is Taihoor Rana. Rana was arrested in the US in 2009. Almost 16 years later, he has been brought to India. He will finally face Indian justice. Now, this is indeed a diplomatic success for New Delhi. Only 2 terrorists had been extradited from the US to India. Rana is now the 3rd one. So it is a rare and commendable feat. But tonight, we'll go beyond the euphoria. We will look at the politics behind this extradition and what it tells us about terror and geopolitical convenience. First, some background. Taihoor Rana was born in Pakistan. He served as a doctor in their military. Later, he moved abroad and became a businessman. Rana also has links to the Lashkar-e-Toiba. This is the same terror group that was behind the Mumbai terror attacks of 2008. Rana and his childhood friend aided that attack, that friend being David Coleman Headley. In 2006, Taihoor Rana set up a Mumbai branch for his company. He then sent David Headley to work there. Basically, he gave Headley a perfect cover. While in Mumbai, David Headley did reconnaissance for Lashkar. He identified targets and charted plans. I'm sure you know what happened next. Pakistani terrorists attacked Mumbai in November 2008. They killed more than 160 people. The next year, in 2009, Taihoor Rana was arrested in the US. He was convicted on terror charges. But it took more than a decade to bring him to India. And what about David Headley? He is currently serving time in the US, but chances are he will never be extradited to India. Do you know why? Because he cut a deal with the Americans. David Headley pleaded guilty during the trial. In return, the Americans promised not to extradite him. How about that? This is the same America that claims to never negotiate with terrorists, that eliminates terrorists in foreign countries. Yet at home, they cut a deal. So America's role must be scrutinized here. Former Indian officials say that they acted in bad faith, the Americans. They acted in bad faith. Indian officials say that David Headley was a double agent. Basically, he worked for the US and Pakistan. They also say that Washington knew about Headley's operations. They knew that he was aiding the Mumbai attacks. So why did they not stop him? I guess we'll never know. Maybe that's why the US promised to never extradite David Headley. And it tells you a lot about America's policy. Their fight is not against terrorism. Their fight is against what they perceive as terrorism. An attack on Twin Towers, definitely terrorism. Let's invade multiple countries to pursue justice. A deadly raid by Hamas on Israel, certainly terrorism. Let's give weapons and allow Israel to kill 40,000 Palestinians. But an attack in Mumbai aided by a Pakistani agent? Let's cut him a deal and deny extradition. This is similar to what Pakistan does. Islamabad divides terrorists into good and bad. Good terrorists attack India, bad terrorists attack Pakistan. Maybe they learnt it from their godfathers in Washington. Either way, it is time to call out this hypocrisy. Terrorism should not be good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, political or non-political, strategic or random. Terrorism is terrorism. It is about driving fear into the minds of people. Anyone who does it should be prosecuted. If you're not doing that, you are exposing your interests. And that is what America is doing here. They may have agreed to extradite Taiwoor Rana, but they will keep David Headley locked away. If the United States is serious about fighting terrorism, they must ditch these filters. Forget the geopolitical fallout, focus on justice that you keep preaching others about. Not just justice, the Americans love teaching the world about free speech as well. They call their country the land of the free. But of course, conditions apply, like posting what you think on social media, like criticizing the US President Donald Trump. It may cost you your visa. In fact, hundreds of visas have already been cancelled. So who's on the list? Tourists, students, even green card holders, they've lost their visas. The justification? They posed a threat to national security. The evidence? Screenshots of their social media posts. Remember, Donald Trump's re-election campaign was all about free speech, but now critical social media posts are being treated as crime. If you're traveling to the United States, our next report is a must-watch for you.
The United States is witnessing a major shift in its immigration policies. The Trump administration is reviewing all visa applications with a magnifying lens, and a new kind of crackdown is underway. The land that claims to promote free speech and the right to protest seems to be changing its colors. This month, hundreds of visas were revoked by the Trump administration. This includes tourists, students, and even green card holders. The Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State are working on this together. Their plan is simple. Go through the social media posts of all visa applicants and flag posts that may be of concern to America's national security. Posts that are against their President Donald Trump, and even posts that are seen as hateful. In fact, there's a list. Like posts that are anti-Trump or anti-Semitic, and this includes posts that are pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Houthis, or any post that the Trump administration considers as sympathizing with terror groups. So how exactly is this being done? Well, using artificial intelligence. The Trump administration is heavily deploying AI to flag what it considers as hateful social media content. Till now, at least 500 visas have been revoked. This includes at least 300 student visas. the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has made it clear that everyone is welcome in the United States, but anti-American activities will not be tolerated. Rubio also said that non-US citizens don't have the same rights as Americans. However, critics argue that all visa holders on US soil have the same free speech rights as US citizens. For now, the visa cancellations have begun. The Trump administration wants these people out of the United States, and they found a way to expedite the exit. The US is now charging $998 for each day that a person who had their visa revoked overstays in the country. That's not all. If a person stays in the US for 30 days after having their visa revoked, the Trump administration will consider jail time for the violators.
The Alien Registration Act says that if you're in this country for longer than 30 days illegally, you must register with the federal government. And when those 30 days are up, and if you haven't done that, now we can criminally charge you.
But there is some pushback. Several universities and activists are demanding an explanation. They are accusing the Trump administration of bias. While many students had their visa revoked for political activism, some were targeted with no clear evidence of being involved in political activities. However, many students are now self-deporting themselves. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the crackdown is just getting started. He plans to revoke hundreds of visas every day if those visa holders have made social media posts that the US considers a threat to national security. So if you're planning a trip to the United States, make sure your social media game is about memes and not political activism.
Now let's turn to Panama. It is a tiny nation in Central America, but it is caught in a tug-of-war between two giants, the US and China. Why? Because of a canal. The Panama Canal, a strip of water that connects two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. The waterway is like America's lifeline. 40% of all containers that pass through it are from the US. Goods worth $270 billion flow through every year. The canal is just 82 kilometers long, but it carries the weight of the world's economy and now the weight of American anxiety. Why do I say this? Because of Pete Hegseth. He's the US Secretary of Defense, or their defense minister, the American defense minister. He's currently in Panama. He landed in Panama City on the 7th of April and began his official visit with a declaration that the US will take the Panama Canal back from China. Listen to this.
Together, we will take back the Panama Canal from China's influence. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations.
That's what Pete Hegseth said on his first day in Panama. The message was not subtle. China has to go. Let me explain what he's talking about. The Trump administration says the Panama Canal has been taken over by China. This canal has 5 ports. 2 of them are operated by a company called C.K. Hutchison. It's a firm from Hong Kong. It operates 2 ports, one at either side of the canal. So basically, this firm controls the entry and the exit. This Hong Kong firm. And they won the contract in 1996. And the US has raised red flags since then, 1996. There are fears of surveillance, espionage, and strategic control of the waterway. And now Washington has a plan to fix it. Buy back the 2 ports. The process is already underway. American firm BlackRock will pay $23 billion for this. And China is furious. They're calling the sale a betrayal. This reaction also betrays China's true intentions. Why are they making a fuss about what a Hong Kong firm does? Maybe there is some truth to Trump's allegations. Washington says it will protect Panama's sovereignty. And what do they want in return? Military bases.
President Trump says we're taking back the Panama Canal from Chinese influence. That involves partnership with the United States and Panama. And we're grateful that they've welcomed U.S. troops on Panamanian soil by invitation through rotational joint exercises. And that's what you'll see in the Memorandum of Understanding, is an opportunity to revive, whether it's the military base, naval air station, locations where U.S. troops can work with Panamanian troops to enhance capabilities.
So Pete Hegseth floated the idea of U.S. bases in Panama and boots on the ground around the canal. How did Panama respond? With a firm no. Panama's defense minister cleared the air. He said no such deal has been agreed upon. Then they released two statements, one in Spanish, the other in English. The Spanish version included a line, and I quote, "The U.S. recognizes Panama's sovereignty over the Panama Canal." That's what the Spanish version said. This sentence was missing from the English version. So Panama is openly standing up to the U.S. And these two countries have a past. The U.S. built the Panama Canal back in 1914. In 1977, they signed a treaty to hand over the canal to Panama. 1977, but the U.S. held on to the canal till 1999, and Panama remembers all of that. The painful American occupation, particularly in the year 1989. You may have read about Operation Just Cause. That's when the U.S. invaded Panama and toppled its government. More than 500 civilians were killed. And the wounds are still raw. So you cannot blame Panama for having trust issues. Donald Trump's rhetoric is not helping either. First, he refused to recognize Panama's sovereignty over this canal. Then he claimed that Chinese troops operate the canal. And he also blamed Panama for overcharging U.S. ships for using the waterway. In February, he sent Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Panama, and now it's Pete Hegseth. So Panama is wading the waters with caution. 2 months back, they pulled out of China's BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. Then they launched an audit into the Hong Kong firm's canal operations. They found multiple contract breaches. Panama says the Hong Kong firm duped them of more than $1 billion. Now that firm is on its way out, but the power play has just begun. The canal is still Panama's, but Trump is desperate to make a deal, and he wants China out of the picture. Moral of the story? In geopolitics, even a canal can become a battlefield. You have probably heard of Dolly the sheep. She was the first mammal to be cloned, and it happened a long time ago in 1996. Since then, the menagerie of cloned animals has only grown, and the science has come a long way. So much so that people are cloning their dead pets, especially in China. This country has more pets than young children, and now people are trying to bring their dead furry companions back to life. This may sound like science fiction, but pet cloning is a $4 billion market around the world now. And what's behind it? How are people cloning their pets, and does it even work? Here's a report.
This is Joker, a Doberman, a loyal and brave companion to a woman in China. But the dog died in 2022 from a heart attack, causing the owner so much more pain than she could have imagined. So the woman turned to science, and she cloned her dog. For $22,000, she replicated her dog. This scenario sounds straight out of science fiction. After all, woman or dog death is inevitable. But in today's day and age, it doesn't have to be forever. And this is not an isolated case. A growing number of pet owners in China are cloning their pets. And here's how it works. People take a skin sample from their pet, insert its DNA into a donor egg, then implant this embryo into a surrogate mother, and soon, the cloned pet, an identical twin of the original pet, is born. This may sound absurd, but for the owners it is a way to overcome grief, to continue their bond with furry companions on their own terms. And for the service providers, it is a way to earn the big bucks, because cloning a pet doesn't come cheap. Cloning a cat costs up to $40,000, and cloning a dog, $50,000. But despite the high costs, people are willing to pay the price to bring their pets kind of back to life. And this is fueled by advancing biotechnology and a booming pet market. You see, China's fertility rate is falling. Now, China has more pets than young children. And its pet supplies market is growing by 7.5% annually. No wonder then that people are going to all kinds of lengths to clone their dead animals. And this isn't just happening in China. The global pet industry stands at $320 billion. It is expected to swell to almost $500 billion by 2030. People are buying more pets. Pet healthcare is improving. There are more variants of pet food than ever before. There is even luxury clothing for pets. And people are willing to splurge. After all, according to a new study, having a cat or a dog can boost your well-being as much as being married or meeting friends regularly. So when a pet dies, the pain pet owners can feel is very real, which is why the global pet cloning market is worth more than $4 billion and it is expected to grow. But experts are concerned. A large number of clones are born unfit. So the process is unfair to the newly born animals, and to the surrogate mothers as well, who undergo unnecessary suffering for this unnatural process. There are also logistical mishaps. For instance, cloning companies sometimes produce an entire litter of cloned puppies instead of a single one. Plus, cloning may preserve the unique traits of a pet that make them irreplaceable, like their physical appearance or their temperament. But critics question whether cloned pets truly have the same personality as their predecessors. After all, pets are uniquely shaped by their experience. And cloning cannot replicate that. Because just as identical twins have very different personalities, cloned pets can be different too. But despite the pitfalls, a lot of pet owners remain undeterred. So people may go through the 5 stages of grief after their pet dies. But for some, there is always a 6th stage: cloning.
Have you watched Minority Report? This movie came out in 2002, so I don't blame you if you don't remember it, but here's the gist of it. A detective works for a police department called Pre-Crime. He uses psychics to help convict murderers before they commit the crimes. He has absolute faith in the system. That is, until the psychics predict that he himself will kill a man. And this throws his life into turmoil, and it leaves us asking a lot of questions, because this movie is a futuristic sci-fi thriller. It is set in the year 2054. But similar events are already taking place. We are in 2025. We're seeing such events, except there is one difference. Instead of using psychics, the police are relying on artificial intelligence. I'm talking about the UK. Their government is creating a murder prediction program. It will use police and government data, then decide how likely someone is to kill. The UK's Ministry of Justice hopes that it will boost public safety. But will it? We say you be the judge. As per a UK-based charity, the project will collect as many as 500,000 records. This will include personal data of people, specifically of convicted offenders, but also of victims and witnesses of crime. The AI tool will collect their name, gender, date of birth, and information on their ethnicity and health. Like if a person struggles with addiction or suicidal thoughts. The AI program will know all of this. Then it will analyze this information and identify those at risk of committing serious violent crimes like murder. What could possibly go wrong? Rhetorical question, but experts have some thoughts nonetheless. They call the tool chilling and dystopian. And there are 3 main reasons why. First, the system will process highly sensitive information of innocent people and those who have gone to the police for help. And like most things tech, the AI program could be prone to glitches and privacy risks. Plus, it could threaten citizens' rights. We've already seen this with China. Their police uses AI to predict crime and protests. The system targets people whose behavior is suspicious. For China's AI, do you know what qualifies as suspicious behavior? Apparently, a person with a mental illness going near a school. That is suspicious. Now, according to reports, this tool is also used to target migrant workers in the country, which brings us to the second big risk. Experts claim that the UK's AI algorithm will build bias, and this will affect the crime predictions. You have probably heard the adage, artificial intelligence systems are only as good as the data they are fed. And time and again, research has shown that the UK police is institutionally racist. So their data will only reinforce this. Campaigners fear that it could code in the bias and profile people with minorities, and low-income communities as criminals. The third big risk, as with all things AI, is accuracy. We have seen this play out repeatedly again. We see this with the AI facial recognition system used by the US police. It fails to accurately identify black faces. The same problem applies to the UK police, the same force that now wants to take 10 steps forward and predict murders with AI. It rings alarm bells. Now, all of this is not to say that the use of technology is all bad. AI is already being used by police all over the world, and it has massive potential. It can transform the way police investigates crimes. It can quickly sift through vast amounts of data. It can identify patterns and links. It is a detective with unlimited time, and it never gets tired. AI sounds like every cop's best friend. But is AI ready for its easy-peasy pre-crime era? Unfortunately, the answer is a hard no. What a Wednesday it was for Donald Trump. He started and then paused a global trade war. For most leaders, that would be enough action for one day, but President Trump had more lined up. He signed a special executive order yesterday. It is called Maintaining Acceptable Water Pressure in Shower Heads. Let me repeat that for you. An presidential executive order to increase your shower pressure, that too in the middle of a global trade war. A lot of you may think that this is a strategy to divert attention, but it's actually not. Shower pressure has been very close to Donald Trump's heart. Take a look.
The first of these is an executive order. The Biden administration launched what you've called a war on showers.
You buy a new house, you pay a lot of money, and the developers, you're not allowed to do anything more. They put restrictions on, but you wash your hands, and in my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair. I have to stand under the shower for 15 minutes till it gets wet. It comes out drip, drip, drip. It's ridiculous. And what you do is you end up washing your hands 5 times longer. They take a shower and water comes dripping out. It's dripping out, very quietly dripping out. People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once. They wanted to restrict you to 38 gallons of water a day. That sounds like a lot, but it's not. When you're a rich person and you like to take a shower. Shower heads and faucets. So shower heads, you take a shower, the water doesn't come out. You want to wash your hands, the water doesn't come out. So what do? You just stand there longer, or you take a shower longer? Because my hair, I don't know about you, but it has to be perfect. Perfect.
It's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands gather in Istanbul for protest against the arrest of Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. UK's National Mapping Service maps out the country on Minecraft using around 100 billion blocks. And climate activists pour blood red dye into the pond at the US Embassy in London. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1912, the Titanic set sail from England. It was on its maiden voyage to New York. At that time, it was the world's largest ship. Within a few days, the luxury liner hit an iceberg and sank, killing 1,500 passengers. We are leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Genel Başkanımız Özgür Özel sizleri burada yatıyor. Kürt demokratların oylarını getirebilecek kişileri hepinizi saygıyla 20'den fazla yabancı kuruluşa